Alrighty, watch fans. This is Rob, and you are watching episode 1 of Rob Reports here on my channel, graciously hosted by the About Time channel. I'm going to report on watches that I own, watches my friends own, perhaps viewers send in watches for review, but if it deals with horology, I'm going to be talking about it. You can expect to see videos from the likes of Casio, Timex, Mickey Mouse watches, all the way up to independents such as Vuitton, Philippe Dufour, and everything in between. Obviously, I won't have those kind of watches necessarily in hand, but we're going to talk about those kind of watches because I feel it's important to get more people exposed to what's out there besides Rolex, besides the main ones out there. So, thank you for coming along this journey with me. Thank you to Karan and Chris for giving me the push to put this video out, or these series of videos out. Now, you've seen the clickbait-worthy title. I sold my Submariner for this. You're probably wondering what's under the cloth. We're gonna get to it. A little bit about the Submariner. So, I, for years, wanted the Rolex Submariner, as many other people do. I saved and traded and, did what everybody else does, and eventually got enough money where I was able to obtain a 116610LN, your ceramic black sub with a date, and I was ecstatic. I absolutely loved that watch, had no issues with it, maybe besides the occasional, hey, is that a fake Rolex comment, but I loved the watch, absolutely loved the watch. I realized though, after, roughly 6 months of ownership, that as much as I loved the Submariner, I loved some of the watches that I had sold along the way to get my Submariner. I loved some of those watches more, more than the Submariner. So what did I do? I did something stupid and rash, but I decided I would sell my Submariner and get those watches that I had already owned. I would rebuy those watches and satisfy myself. So that's what I did. I sold my Submariner, of course, prior to the craze where I could have made a handsome little profit. I sold it and have no regrets about it. Eventually one day I'll get another sub because I do love them so much. But one of the watches was my Speedy. We'll talk about that here in one of the videos later on. But my Speedmaster is one of the watches that I rebought. And the main reason for selling my sub is this one. Under this little cloth here is a watch that I owned multiple variations of, and I loved every single one. And this one will never leave the collection. I know most times you're discouraged from saying the word keeper and things like that, but I can safely say that this is a keeper for me. I truly love this watch. When I bought it, it wasn't really that much, relatively speaking. I understand all things are relative, but this was not a quote-unquote expensive purchase in reference to other watches that I had wanted out there, like the sub and whatnot. And it means a lot to me because it reminds me to chase the watches that you like, not just the hyped watches. So, without further ado, here is today's watch. It is the Tudor Black Bay 41 with the ETA. So, here we are, first gen Tudor. This is the 79220N. Let me get it wound up and get that beautiful little snowflake seconds hand going. So, here is a watch that I bought brand new from the dealer in early 2017, after I had sold my Submariner, and it was after they had canceled or discontinued this in lieu of or I should say for the new in-house movements. So I got one of the last ones out there from an AD full box, full papers, everything. And I've worn it, as you can see, from all of the scratches and dings and stuff. I've worn it and loved it. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Tudor was founded all the way back in 1926 by Hans Wilsdorf, who also obviously started Rolex. He started Tudor as a opportunity for people to own quality watches at a more affordable price. The way that they were able to do that is by using many Rolex parts, and you'll often see in vintage Submariners, both Tudor and Rolex, they used the same cases, they used the same everything, minus the dial and the movement. So, and like I said, 1926, Tudor was founded and had a fair amount of success, but was often viewed as a poor man's Rolex, Rolex's little brother. There's still a fair amount of that today, but I feel like in some ways Tudor's able to really kind of forge their own way as of late. So in 2009, there was an extensive relaunch of Tudor, and it was the result of many years of just bad watches. As many watch companies out there in the 90s and early 2000s, there were some really, really bad models that were released. So in 2009, huge relaunch. They come out with a few different models, and in 2012, the Black Bay was released. The Black Bay was released, and it basically blew the socks off everybody, because what they did is and in Tudor's words, more or less, they said that they took 60 years of dive watch history and distilled it into one spectacular piece. So they took inspiration from a variety of models, the 7922, the 7923, the 7924 Big Crown. They took many, many little bits and pieces and turned this into essentially a greatest hits album for the fans. And I feel like they've succeeded with this. Now, there are many aspects of this watch that some people love and some people hate, but one example is, so for example, they took the bezel from the 1950s, kind of that red triangle at the 12, the numbers, all of that. They took the snowflake hands. That's usually one of the more divisive parts of the watch. And that came from the 70s. And they went through and just basically put it all together. And they started out with a maroon bezel and this dial. The maroon came from a prototype Submariner that was never put into production and kind of just sat in the archives for 30 years until they decided to release that color. Not too many companies had played around with maroon, so that was kind of a fun watch. I owned it, and it just was a little too much to wear on a regular basis, at least for me. Then in, I think, 2014, they came out with the blue version that had the navy bezel, and they got that color from some of those vintage snowflake Marine Nationale colors. But it had a black dial, and it had the white gold indices and hands. So it was a little bit colder than this. It didn't have quite the same warmth. Then everybody, that had a few years of clamoring for the black bezel finally got their wish. In 2015, it was announced and basically knocked everybody's socks off, because this was the watch that they had been asking for. They released this on October 14th, 2015. It didn't hit the stores until 2016. And then fast forward 5 months, in Basel 2016, they announced the in-house movement and basically discontinued this. So it had a 5-month production run. It's not limited, but with that kind of a run, it's safe to assume that this was the most, I guess, it was the smallest, number out there out of the available Black Bays. And that's basically what's driven up a lot of the interest, because anything odd or short runs usually has some sort of an interest from the fans. So let's talk about this overall watch. The dimensions for the watch are good by modern standards, but not too unruly. So you have basically, let me get this, see if I can get this right on camera here. You have a 41 millimeter case. You have oops, it's hard to, there we go. Roughly from end tip to end tip, roughly about 50 millimeters lug to lug. It's nice because unlike the Submariner, you have those end links that just drop off right off the case. Similar to the vintage subs. There's no overhang. Thickness is a relatively svelte 12.5. Crown, being a big crown, you can see 8 mils. Relatively good size there, crown with no crown guards. And the lug width is 22 mils. The bracelet that they went with in these first gens is the non-fake riveted. I know that gets a lot of hate. It's the non-fake riveted oyster style. There's no glide lock extension or glide lock clasp, but there is a few micro adjust holes, which makes it nice. One cool feature, let me see if I can get this in camera, is the ceramic ball bearings. You can hear that click. Very positive. So another cool feature, the Tudor shield inside the clasp. Nice little feature there. But overall, you got full brush on the links with polish on the sides. One of the drawbacks that people hate is this quote-unquote slab side. You can see through the years it picks up its fair amount of scratches. It does have some chamfering on the edges right there. Nice little bevel, but for the most part, just some basic slab sides. Nice fingerprint magnets and scratch magnets. On the big crown, you have the Tudor Rose logo with some nice paint there. Also, you have on the dial the Rose logo. Unlike the new in-house versions where they have the shield, this one, the first gen, has the Rose logo. The most important for some people are the words at the bottom there at 6. This is referred to as the smiley dial because you can see the self-winding. It somewhat resembles a smile, whereas the new ones, the in-house versions, are all straight, so it's a little bit colder, not as playful. Bezel action on here, some of the best that I've heard and felt. It's very positive, 0 black backplay, and if you're lucky, there's a little bit of a detent if you're not really ratcheting it fast. If you're just taking it normal, there's a little bit of a detent at the 12, so it kind of catches itself and lets you know that you're at the 12 o'clock. So that's kind of a fun thing. The case back, rather plain, in Rolex fashion. You have the serial number. Oops, let me get that in focus. You've got the serial number and the model number, but nothing basic or nothing fancy, just some basic text right there. Again, 22 millimeter lugs. Overall, an amazing watch. Something that's definitely going to go up in value throughout the years. 5-month production run in anything usually means that it's going to be a future collectible. The fact that the Black Bay now has variations in just about every metal, whether it be bronze, silver, gold, ceramic, steel, just about anything, it's only it's a testament to how popular this watch is. It really is an amazing piece and something that can stand on its own merits. I consider it, again, the greatest hits of Tudor's dive history, and I think it's definitely worthy of any collector's watch box, but regardless of what other watches might live in there. If you don't have one, you need to go get one. They're only getting more scarce. And if you don't have one, you don't want one, that's fine. We'll all just enjoy it. So thank you for the time. Thank you for bearing with me on this first video, and hopefully you can enjoy the journey as we go along this way.